What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we are taking a look at the final Lost Box variant, Lost Box Goodra. So if you guys aren't sure what Lost Goodra is a deck revolving Hisuian Goodra VSTAR, and it's very tanky attack. Rolling Iron does 200 damage, and then during your opponent's next turn, you take 80 less damage from attacks. This technically means that you become a bulky Pokemon with 350 HP that your opponent has to try to hit in order to take a one-shot. You do have 270, but taking 80 less damage, it means that your opponent technically has to work their math around. And with something like Lost Box, as well as something along the lines of Gardevoir, for instance, this is something very tricky to deal with. And on top of that, if your opponent comes close to KOing you, you have the Moisture Star ability where during your turn you can heal all damage from the Goodra. So it can really tank itself, and setting up two of these is fantastic. Your opponent is most likely not going to one-shot you, which means that you're dealing a total of 400 damage between two attacks, and then you have another Goodra to switch into. Sadly, you only get Moisture Star once per game, but it is still very useful. And with that, we are running the Lost Box package again, because the card that makes everything good, Mirage Gate, just keeps making so many decks better. The ability to cycle through your deck with cards like Comfey as well as Colress, putting stuff in the Lost Zone so that way you don't have to see it later in the game, thins your deck permanently for the rest of that game, and it just makes everything better. The energy split, we are running 2 Jet, 4 Metal Energy, 2 Psychic just to finish KOs with Sableye if needed, and then we have 4 Water. The neat thing about this is because Hisuian Goodra does use that water, it means that you're more likely to be able to use consistent attacks with the Greninja as well, which can deal massive amounts of damage. If you have something with 280 HP, you hit it for 200, and you do that a couple times, you can use the 90-90 spread with the Greninja in order to finish a KO. So, as always, the deck list will be posted right now, and the deck list will be posted within the description. If you guys want to play this deck, just copy and paste it in and enjoy. I don't really have much to say about the deck. We have 3 gameplays today just because some of the games were quick, and then the final game against Mew was very fun. So, with that being said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. If you enjoy it, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, consider sharing it with a friend. And per my last video, the announcement I wanted to share was that we are closing in on 500 subscribers, and we are also hitting the threshold for monetization on the first half of monetization. So what that means is that I'm going to be able to unlock memberships, which means that if you guys want to become members of my YouTube channel, you can get a cool little icon for when you comment on videos. And I'm also going to be streaming on weekends whenever the monetization starts up, just so that way if you guys want to, showcase your badges with everyone else, you have the ability to. But as always, thank you guys for all of the support, and I'll catch you in the gameplay. Later. Alrighty, guys, getting into game number 1 here. My opponent with the Ramen Pikachu coin, a fantastic looking coin. Getting into game number 1 here, using Lost Goodra. Hopefully going to be able to set up how we want to. So my opponent loses the coin flip, so we will go first. And we need to try and chase getting 7 in the Lost Zone. So, us having no basic Pokemon, unfortunately, but it's not the end of the world. Thankfully, we do have the ability to start. And my opponent mulligans, so we're playing against Charizard. Charizard should, in theory, be a good matchup, as we do have access to hitting for a lot of damage. And my opponent doesn't, have the ability to one-shot a Goodra, so we should be pretty good. So we draw a Comfey, pretty perfect. And then we get an Escape Rope as well as a Metal Energy. Let's see, I could pull off multiple Comfeys this turn, which I actually don't hate the chances of me doing. Plus, it lets me see more cards, because we can hit that Comfey, the other one, and then we can bench the Goodra. So, does it change anything? No, because I can attach Retreat anyways, so... I'm going to take the Escape Rope, because if we do find another way to get another Comfey, it allows for us to be able to use that one as well. So we'll use the Flower Selecting, getting the Pokegear. I don't need the Ultra Ball just yet, and I want to be able to play a supporter next turn. So now we can use the Nest Ball, We could grab the Radiant Greninja in order to draw some cards. Let's see. So if we can hit both Comfeys next turn, Comfeys, sorry, we'll have the ability to go to 4. Colress would be 6, so we would need one more for 7. Let's see. To apply some extra pressure, I'm going to use the Radiant Greninja. And this will allow us to kind of set up some more. And we actually get 2 Colress, which isn't terrible. It's actually super solid. And we can bench the Goodra as well as the Cramorant, meaning next turn we should be able to guarantee the 6, possibly 7, if we get another Comfey to retreat into. And then we also have access to that Cramorant, so looking like a pretty good turn. And if we do hit a couple Mirage Gate, we could actually take out both of these Charmander and put my opponent at an even more of a disadvantage. So I'm not hating the way that things are looking. My opponent having all of the shiny cards just as us, so there's the switch. My opponent going to be able to use that Trinity Nova, only accelerating to itself though. There's the boss's orders, bringing the Goodra up. And I don't think that it's going to fare well for my opponent. So we do get the water energy, which means that we do have the ability to Mirage Gate if we can hit it. So the first thing that we'll do is use the escape rope to bring up one of those Comfeys. Looking at a couple more cards, so we have the first flower selecting, grabbing us the Mirage Gate, which is one of the pieces that we do need. And then we can Colress. Colress is going to allow us to get boss's orders. We can get the escape rope, and then we actually might be able to get to, well, we'll get to 6 this turn. And my opponent doesn't have anything that can snipe the bench, but I think Mirage Gate's going to be a bit better for us. So we'll go like this, get rid of those, and then we can use, let's see, I could attach retreat, which I don't hate, or I can just escape rope, and regardless of what my opponent brings up, we can benefit. But at the same time, if I do that, if I attach retreat now, it means that I gain the ability to KO a Charmander, which means that my opponent only has 1 on board. Let's see, what's the best way to play this? The arc really isn't going to do much, so we're just going to attach retreat, go into the Cramorant, and then we can KO the Charmander, taking a prize and then keeping the Goodra safe. And thankfully, with my opponent not being able to one-shot a Goodra, or I'm sorry, they can, but not being able to one-shot a Goodra after we use Rolling Iron, we can use the Moisture Star and then going to Rolling Iron again, so we should be able to win the trade. So my opponent just using Power Edge, not quite a big turn for them. And considering we are at 5 now, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're at 5. We'll go into the Goodra, and we are at 5, so we do have access to setting up. And we can actually go for a double Mirage Gate onto the Greninja, which I don't hate. So what we'll do first is use the Pokegear just to thin some cards. We'll play down the Colress. Colress will allow us to look at quite a bit more, so we can get the Mirage Gates, we can get a Comfey as well as a Switch Cart. I don't think I'm going to fully need to set up the Sableye here. But at the same time, it could be useful, but I don't have access to another ability, so we'll grab a Sableye just in case. And then we can use that Mirage Gate. Mirage Gate will allow us to grab some of the energy that we need, which means that we can go here and start to set up the Goodra. And we could use Escape Rope as well, but I don't feel the full need for it. I think what we do here is that we actually can go for the Radiant Greninja play to KO 2 of my opponent's Pokemon, and then even if the Goodra gets bossed, it won't be KO'd by Arc V-Star, which means that we gain the ability to Moisture Star and then still swing. So, we'll go for the Escape Rope here. go into the Comfey. We'll use that flower selecting just to add some extra cards to the Lost Zone. And then we can use that Mirage Gate, just grabbing the energy that we need. We can go one here, one here. And then we can use the Mirage Gate and go 1 and 1. I'll keep the Psychic just because we do have the ability to swing with that Sableye. And now we can put my opponent in a very bad situation as we can use this Moonlight Shuriken. And my opponent concedes. So the consistency aspect worked wonderfully in that game. That was game 1. Let's hop right into a game number 2 and see if we can do the same exact thing. Alrighty guys, getting into game number 2, let's see if we can put the same amount of pressure going forward as we did in game 1 with being able to pull off the Greninja and also having a backup Goodra. Definitely was something nice, especially considering in the beginning of the game we had the ability to set up flawlessly. So we will go first, as it will allow us to evolve into the Goodra, and if we somehow find a way to get to 7 turn 2, then we can start swinging. So we don't draw anything, but that hand would have been phenomenal. We would have had a turn 2 gas, so let's see exactly what we get here. And this start not looking as good, but definitely is useful. We do have access to a Comfey or two. Comfey, same difference. Let's see. So my opponent flips over the Char Cadet. So it seems like they are playing something to move energy around. So the first thing we'll start with is the Hisuian Heavy Ball. Spiritom's not going to be needed. Grab the Sableye just so that way we have it. And then what we can do is grab the Comfeys. We can attach Retreat, use the first one. And then we also have access to setting up potentially with Pokegear for next turn, which will be fantastic. So we do get an Escape Rope as well as Battle VIP Pass. Considering I want to get to 7 as fast as possible, this is tough. I think, let's see, because I can Artisan anyways, and I have the Goodra in hand, and I don't necessarily need the Greninja at the moment. So I think I'm going to grab the Escape Rope, putting the VIP in there. It really is awkward to do, but the Escape Rope lets me use the second Comfey, which means that I can potentially use a third, and we get the Greninja anyways, so we're in a pretty okay position. I'm going to wait to use the Pokegear. There's no point now. And what we can do from here, we'll bench the Greninja, bench the Goodra, and then we can end the turn. So we'll see what my opponent wants to do. If we do get the Pokegear and hit a Chorus, we can actually potentially set up the ability to use Cramorant. So my opponent using the Ream, and I have to switch out my active with one of my bench. So we'll just go into the other Comfey. Just, I don't think it's going to get KO'd this turn. And my opponent is playing a fire deck of some sort. The Victini being able to power up. I'm not sure what my opponent has going, but it will be interesting to see. So we'll start with the flower selecting, allowing us to see a Chorus Experiment. And then what we can do is actually use the Chorus Experiment. We can grab the Comfey, the Switch Cart, and the Water. I think I'm only going to need one Goodra this game, and I do have access to other attackers should something happen. So we do have access to the Switch Cart. Let's see. I'm at 3 in the Lost Zone. This is about to put me to 5. Another Comfey will be 6. Attach Retreat. So if we hit another Mirage Gate, we can actually set up our own Goodra. So not looking too bad at all. So we'll use that Switch Cart, bring in the Comfey, use the flower selecting again, grabbing that Hisuian Goodra VSTAR, so that way we have something to evolve into. And we are at 6 at the moment. We do have an energy to discard, and we do have another Comfey that we can actually go for. So that's what we'll do. We'll use that Jet energy, setting up as much as we can with the flower selecting, and we get Clara as well as Comfey. I'm going to grab the Clara, because it will allow us to bring back some pieces we may need. And we'll use the Radiant Greninja here. Hitting Colress and Super Rod, again, not too bad. And then we have the retreat into the Cramorant. And we'll use the Mirage Gate now, so that way if it gets shuffled away, we do have the ability to power up a Goodra next turn. And now we can use the Spit innocently and start putting some pressure on my opponent. And with being at 7, Cramorant gets knocked out, and we have the Comfey. Plus the Chorus, it puts us at 10 in case we decide to use the Sableye. We have 3 energy gone. We do have 2 Psychics. The deck does only run 3, I believe, so off the top of my head, we should be in a very good spot. And as you guys can see, I mean, that was our turn 2. We already have 24 cards left in deck, 7 in the Lost Zone. We set up the Mirage Gate, and, you know, Goodra is going to be able to hit hard and do what it's supposed to do, so. My opponent using Level Ball, probably going to grab a Charcadet or grabbing a Pidgey. That way they do have the ability next turn, and we actually might be able to donk my opponent next turn, depending on if we can get the Greninja off or not. Not having the ability to fully showcase what Goodra can do, but if this game does end fast enough, we'll hop right into a game 3 and go from there. So, I think next turn I am looking to power up the Radiant Greninja. It's going to be our safest play. And with that, I think we'll be able to. So what we'll do first, we do have the energy in the deck, I believe, but just to double check, we will shuffle these 2 back. Just to make sure, we'll use that Mirage Gate. And thankfully we did shuffle the water back in as we only had 1. We can attach again. And then go Colress, and as long as Colress finds us a switching card, which it does, we will be able to donk my opponent as soon as turn 3. Also, making sure that we have 10 in the Lost Zone if we chose to go into Comfey. So, hitting the 90-90, taking a knockout on my opponent's 2 Pokemon, just showcasing the sheer power behind Mirage Gate, making it to where basically anything is possible when you're running this. And there is the board being diminished by Greninja. And that is the game. So, that was game number 2. Both of these have gone by relatively fast, even though they've showcased the consistency aspects. Let's hop right into a game number 3 and see exactly what we can do. Alrighty guys, into a game number 3. We don't see very many game 3s on the channel just because everything goes by so incredibly time-consumingly within matches, but these first 2 games went by really fast, so hopefully in this case this game lasts a bit longer. So my opponent potentially playing Mew, and if they are playing Mew, our hand is not looking too good. If we can top deck a Comfey in order to use that Jet energy and possibly hit a Battle VIP pass, we'll be in a super good spot, but unfortunately, that doesn't look like the case, and it seems like we might be in for a very long game here, so we're just going to pass. I could have Jet Energy the Sableye, but it's easier for my opponent to hit 80 than it is 110, I feel like, so my opponent just going to be able to go off here, playing down the Cramorant, or playing down the Genesect using their VSTAR, so I don't think my opponent expects the Spiritomb, so we can actually shut my opponent out in the sense of that. And if they fill up their board, we don't have to worry about something like Ice Cube, and we can go from there. So there is the Battle VIP pass. My opponent grabbing 2 more of those Genesects. Attaching a Fusion Energy to the Mew. They're going to be able to draw 2 cards, 3 cards, using a power tablet as well, which does work out for us as we are able to actually set up how we need to. So my opponent wasting those power tablets, little do they know that we do have the ability to actually set up how we need to. My opponent goes for the Elisa Sparkle, perfectly fine. and attaching them to the Muse, which means Genesect is indeed going to get shut off, assuming that we can set up. So my opponent going for the Chromatic, hitting tails. Regardless, my opponent has a phenomenal setup here. Ours is looking a bit lackluster, but as soon as we get to 7, we should be able to get the ball rolling. So my opponent using the Psychic Leap, going to put Cramorant into the discard for us. Unfortunately, we are forced to bring up the Sableye. And now it comes down to if we can start building our Lost Zone or not. So we do get a Hisuian Heavy Ball. This does allow us to grab the Comfey, which we will grab. So we can go Comfey. The first thing we'll do is use the Colress. Colress will allow us to see quite a few cards. And wow, this is a lackluster game so far. We're going to have to grab these energies as well as the Mirage Gate. And we're going to have to use the Jet Energy, hoping to see what we can do. Hit the Flower Selecting, grabbing the Nest Ball. So Nest Ball will allow us to grab another Comfey. So we can grab the Comfey, or we can grab the Greninja to draw some cards. Considering the fact that we do have some Pokegears in hand, we'll grab the Greninja. We could always draw into a couple more pieces there. So we'll use the concealed cards, getting rid of the water energy. Perfectly getting another Comfey, which means that we do have the chance to hit 7 next turn, which means if we can find something like a Goodra here, we are solid. We do find Ultra Ball, and Ultra Ball looks pretty nice right here. So we are at 4, as we mentioned, which means that we can go Ultra Ball, getting rid of that Clara, as well as a... I don't want to get rid of the boss's orders, but I feel okay doing so. And we can grab the Goodra, and hopefully Goodra sticks to where we can start to set up for the next turn. My opponent gets rid of the Goodra. We're in a really awkward spot. We do need to get the Spiritomb out as well, sadly. We could have Nest Balled for it, but the Comfeys were actually more important. And now we're in a situation where we can Comfey, hopefully Pokegear, and if we can find the evolution as well as everything else we need, we'll be a-okay. So my opponent playing Luminous Energy. Huh, I've never seen Luminous Energy played within here. So my opponent using that Mew VMAX, and if they have boss's orders, we are in a bad situation. Thankfully though, my opponent has gone through those power tablets. My opponent does need at least 1 power modifier in order to... So there's the boss's orders, bringing up the Goodra. And something tells me we're not going to be able to keep anything and allow it to stick. But thankfully we do have access to... Let's see. I think if we get Spiritomb out, it's the best way that we can play it. So my opponent going for that Cross Fusion Strike. And hitting 210, so we actually can put my opponent in a very bad spot now. So, and we top deck the Colress as well. So we can use that Colress. Colress will allow us to grab the Switch Cart as well. Although I think we have so many energies that we're in a rough situation for sure. So I think what we'll do is we'll grab the water as well as the Mirage Gate. And then what we're going to have to do is switch cart into the Comfey. And then double Mirage Gate. Set up from there. So we'll go switch cart into the Comfey. Healing the damage. Go for the Flower Selecting. Hitting Roxanne, which could be potentially useful. And we still do have access to Greninja. So it all comes down to if we can hit exactly what we need. So we'll get rid of the water energy, and we hit Colress, and it seems like we're not hitting anything that we could find useful. We'll use the Pokegear just to see, and the Goodra was the next few cards. So my opponent takes a knockout here. We can actually put them to 2 cards with Roxanne, and we do have the Spiritomb in deck, so Pokegear not doing its best for us. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we might need to do. I don't think so. I think what we're going to have to do from here is just pass and hope that my opponent doesn't have something like that boss. And if they do, then we are in for a tough time. So we do have access to Moisture Star though, and my opponent attaches a Luminous Energy, uses the Escape Rope, and we'll just go into the Comfey. And my opponent uses Elisa Sparkle, thinning some cards out of their hand, but not going to be enough. And so we have 2 energy here. We do have 1 in 1, so we do need to be careful of our energy. But when it comes down to this, I think we're in a solid spot. We can promote the Goodra, and now we just need to find one of the Goodras and we'll be good. So the first thing we'll do is use that Chorus Experiment, finding the Goodra thankfully, as well as Nest Ball and Jet Energy, which means that we do gain the ability to shuffle next turn. I think what we'll do is grab the Super Rod. Super Rod might be more beneficial. Yeah, I don't hate this, because we do need to actually put quite a few amount of cards back into the deck. So what we can do is use that Moisture Star in order to heal the damage, attach the water. We'll use that Super Rod going to allow us to put some energy back, and we can also put back the Cramorant, as later on something like that Sableye might be useful. We can use the Nest Ball into the Spiritomb, and then start with the Mirage Gates. And so we can grab the 2 water and the metal, attaching. And my opponent not going to be able to take a knockout. We hit for 200. My opponent can't heal. They could shuffle back in the Mew, but they're not going to be doing a lot of damage. And I think we're doing okay. So we can hit for 180. Now my opponent can cycle between the Mews, but if we are able to, we can actually potentially set up 2 Sableyes in order to take the knockouts on Mew. So my opponent just switching into the Mew, using the Ultra Ball to thin. And they are down 3 tablets, so they do need to find 1 tablet. My opponent not going to be able to one-shot us this turn, but it's not the end of the world. My opponent using the Elisa Sparkle. And this Goodra will be hit, and then we will have one being KO'd, but we actually might be able to set up with a Radiant Greninja into a Sableye play, which doesn't sound all that bad either. So what we can do, let's see. So if we hit here for 180 and then 90, that's 270. And assuming that my opponent doesn't see the play coming, we can use the Lost Mine to actually finish the game, making things a lot easier for us. So I think what we do here, let's see. We'll go Mirage Gate right now just to potentially get the energy. So we can go here, attach to the Radiant Greninja. Super Rod not going to be able to help us. We can hit for 180 on this Mew. My opponent's setting up to where they can potentially attack with Genesect as well, so it can be a bit scary. My opponent going for the retreat. Going into Genesect. Interesting. So my opponent just chooses to pass, and that does open up quite a few things for us. We can play down that Artisan. Artisan will allow us to thin the deck, as we can get Cramorant out, which means Cramorant can deal some damage. We can hit for 180 on the Genesect. And then if we get a Psychic next turn, we should be okay. So my opponent passing again. It seems like my opponent is in quite a predicament. I'm not too sure what their plan is. Probably going to be to come up and then try to set up as much as they can. I could escape rope, forcing up another Genesect, which we can hit for 110, putting ourselves in a better situation. And I don't actually hate that either. So we'll go into the escape rope. My opponent brings up Mew, which is fine. We can bring up the Cramorant. Use that Spit innocently for 90. And now I'm starting to see the game plan. We have 1 damage here, 4 damage here, which is 5, and then there's 7 with the Oricorio. So my opponent going for the knockout on the Goodra, which means now we can use that Roxanne, start to set up some math, and we could actually take 5 prizes here if we wanted to. So what I will do, let's see, so Comfy is there, so promote the Comfy, and we draw the Psychic Energy, which means we do have the ability to set up the Sableye if we choose to. So what we'll do first is use that Flower Selecting, grabbing us the Escape Rope. And what we can do now is just destroy my opponent's board even further. Let's see, is it better for me to take a couple prizes or not right now? I think this is what we'll do. We'll use the escape rope now. So my opponent goes into Genesect. Promote the Sableye, making sure there is 10, and there is, which is perfect. And we know that we have access to a Super Rod, so what we can do is use the Roxanne, putting us at a couple cards left. My opponent had 2 cards, and they are going to be in a tricky situation after this. So what we can do here is use Lost Mine. Lost Mine will allow us to go for the 20 and 20, which means then what we can do, I don't have to knock out this Genesect. I can actually leave it active and force my opponent to be in an awkward situation, which doesn't sound too bad because then I can take the remaining prizes with Greninja. So let's see. If I'm dealing 70, this Mew needs to go to 240. So 240. And then we actually can KO the Genesect, which is perfect. So now we have the KO ability with the Radiant Greninja, and we do have the KO ability with the Sableye. We do have the Mirage Gate, so my opponent goes into a bit of a awkward state. We should be fine. There's no 2 prizers on the board, and if my opponent uses the any attack to KO Sableye, if they don't judge us, we do have Raihan to attach, which means that we can take the rest of the prizes. Now, if my opponent chooses to go for something along the lines of using that Psychic Leap, they can deal 70 damage, but we can just use Lost Mine and KO the Oricorio, so that was the best way to go about that. So my opponent going for that Max Miracle, doing 70 damage, and I don't think that they see the situation with Lost Mine. So what we can do now is just use the Lost Mine, dealing 20, 50, 70, 90, all 120 to the Oricorio, and with that comes the game. So that was a great game 3. If you guys did enjoy today's video, I want to thank you for watching. If you did enjoy it, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and if you found the video interesting, useful, fun, whatever it may be, consider sharing it with a friend. But if you have made it this far, do me a favor, comment the fire emoji down below. And with that being said, I will catch you guys in Monday's video. Later.